All right.
And, it's recording, yeah.
Yeah.
Action.
Action,
Cut.
Jackson.
Have fun, you crazy kids.
Okay. All right. We're back.
Hi, Matt.
What's going on?
It's been a long time.
Dude,
It's been a
we are
long
back.
time.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone.
Wow.
I'm Jason with Jason's Heart, and this is Matt with Jason's Heart.
Yep.
We are starting our podcast again. We had a little hiatus there, but
Yep.
that was very well used.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Planning for where we are now, and it's been fluid.
Yep.
It's been very fluid because of the fact that we have rock stars that are just crushing it.
Absolutely.
So that's exciting.
Yeah. And I think one thing we hadn't, where we kind of left off, we were sort of revisiting the areas that we serve with our apprenticeship.
Mhm.
And I know we hadn't really gotten around to having that housing conversation. And that's a big part. So I think this week we're going to talk about housing.
Housing.
Yeah. We were, Jason and I we were chatting earlier, and it was like, I spent almost 25 years doing banking and lending and housing and in that arena. And one thing I learned was, it is a major cottage industry. And what that means is, it touches almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons I always refer to it as sort of that cottage industry, because everything like funnels off of it, and it touches everything from trades to banking to title to insurance, and even homeowners insurance and flood insurance and suppliers supplying material and appliances. And it's just the scope of industries that housing touches is huge, but there's probably a bigger area that it touches.
Yeah,
That
and
gets overlooked often.
yeah, that is very true. People who have had to kind of change where they are in life and really work on themselves for a while, and once they're ready to, start stepping forward and make a new life, it's very difficult sometimes to find that housing, not necessarily the housing, but the affordable housing.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. Rent is just, it's amazing
Yeah.
how much it costs for how little you get. We just got out of where it was a seller's market.
Yeah.
It was amazing. The house right next to us, how much more it was sold for versus what it was actually valued at. And that was because, you had 4 or 5 people just throwing out offers trying to outbid each other, and
Yeah.
it's hard to start a new life
Right.
without that foundation of a place to stay.
Yep. And it's one of the reasons I've served on the Affordable Housing Initiatives of the Lincoln's board for over 12 years, because it means a great deal to the success of a community, just like behavioral, mental health services, substance use, those sort of things, even transitioning from custody and such. But it's one of the reasons I give of my time to support that board and their work, because they fight very hard for affordable housing. One of the things we've seen, we just saw the Federal Reserve raise their target interest rate 3/4 of a point, 75 basis points, and they're talking another 125, which means in a matter of months it's gone up 2%. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge deal, because it not only affects housing starts, interest rates. Ultimately, interest rates are going to dictate the number of housing starts. We have an a record low again of homes on the market, what we call inventory. So the reason we're talking about housing is not just for affordable housing, but it impacts rents as well. And we have seen major increases in rents, like staggeringly huge increases. And that impacts, you know, those interest rates and those rents impact organizations' ability to obtain money, whether it's commercial or whatnot, to build housing complexes like apartments, places where transitioning folks can find safety and a roof and stability. It obviously affects people who want to buy their first home as well, but for our purposes, you know, it just continues limiting the prospects of someone getting out of or overcoming a barrier, as we always say. You know, it's really hard to overcome that barrier successfully if you can't find a place to live. Shelter, right? It's one of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. One of the things you need, you know, food, shelter, and that's why it's a big deal. And I pay a lot of attention to that and fight very hard to keep driving for those projects. But yeah, I'm really worried about the coming year or two and how this is all going to play out. So I don't know what your thoughts are, but
I'll be honest, I'm not too much into the financial side of
Yeah.
things, and so it's.
But even housing in general,
Yeah.
like you understand the importance for
oh,
sure.
Oh, for sure. It's without an address, you can't get employment.
Right.
Without
I didn't
employment,
mention
you
that.
can't get an address. You're in a vicious cycle.
How do you break it?
How do you break it? And
Right.
that's not something that I know I can solve myself, but it's
Right.
something that we can talk about and learn about
Yeah, that's a great
to
point.
educate ourselves.
Yeah, I hadn't even really thought about that actually. Just the importance of having a physical address and
Yeah.
what that means.
Yeah,
That's a big deal.
we do a lot of work with
Yeah.
the People's City Mission here in Lincoln. We work with them a lot, and you know the nice thing about that is they are providing an address, a place for someone to stay who has no place,
Right.
so they can, you know, get off their feet. You know, not get off their feet, but get back on their feet. I should say,
Sure.
and start taking steps and moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that's something that, you know I'm very grateful that, you know, there's such a big community in Lincoln that does support that.
Yeah.
You know, have you seen any numbers on, you know, increases in apartment buildings or in housing? You know, is the city of Lincoln expanding that, or are they slowing down on that? Because you were talking with the
Yeah,
rates.
you know, I know NeighborWorks is doing a lot of work with affordable housing developments. I know there's a lot of talk now. One of the big hot topic items is cooperatives.
Mm-hmm.
So individuals or folks that can kind of pool their resources and buy like a fourplex, and then each has a unit in that fourplex, but it's like a cooperative. They all own the building together and they each have a share. So I know, you know, co-oping is becoming a big thing. Tiny housing is another solution. I think I just saw the other day you can go on Amazon now and actually buy a prefab tiny house.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a Montgomery Ward's. And if you're old enough to remember Montgomery Ward's, you could buy a lot of things on Montgomery Ward's catalog. And
Yeah.
one of them was a home.
Well,
You
I
know?
do have a Montgomery Ward fuse box in my garage.
Exactly.
That's from 1952.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I know Montgomery Ward, but
Even Vespa scooters.
you know,
You know, were, you know, I think manufactured in Italy for a time before being made here, but it was still a Vespa.
Yeah.
It was through Montgomery Ward, but I digress. You know, I know the city of Lincoln's very aware, and I think we are very fortunate here compared to other places. I spent 4 years in Colorado up in the mountains, and I mean, we have no idea here what a real affordable housing crisis looks like.
yes.
Because believe me, it could be way worse, but it's like you see those hyper areas and it's like, okay, it's even more reason to be paying attention to what is going on right here and making sure we don't find ourselves in a place like that where we don't have that, because that stymies young people staying, you know, it inhibits people transitioning. so many things, plus all those cottage industries that sort of spill over from housing. That's why you hear a ton about housing when you hear the Fed meet about fiscal policy. One of the core things is always housing, because it is it has a big, huge spread and breadth of what it can impact.
You cannot do a thing to the housing industry without affecting probably about 85% of everything else in life.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it is that huge. It's integral to every part of our lives.
Yeah, and I would kind of say too, just so we're kind of getting back in the swing of the podcast and doing our thing, but one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about housing, mostly because it impacts the folks who we are trying to get to find that we can help with our apprenticeship program. And it impacts it will or could impact, and probably arguably is, impact our ability to really find and connect with the folks who need that help, So, when you support Jason's Heart, you don't just support our apprenticeship. We volunteer in other ways. We go to the Affordable Housing Board, and I serve on that board, and I try to do a lot of work, because I know it's such a cornerstone. So my call to action for our listeners and followers is, if you have an opportunity to support agencies or nonprofits that work really hard to preserve affordable housing and make housing available, whether they're for transitioning folks, what have you, I think we would all be well served as a state and a community to support those measures, but it does impact us. So again, when you support Jason's Heart, you're not just supporting us or our apprenticeship, but you're supporting all the work that we do, and you're supporting the outreach of clients that we have. So it's more than just that, but I would encourage people obviously to support us, but also support housing.
Yes.
It matters, and it matters in more ways than I think a lot of people even comprehend.
We all take for granted the fact that, when we leave the office, we have that place to go. And a lot of people who are in a transition and are, have that desire to move forward, it's just another struggle for them.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing is those struggles do build character, and they do, make you more resilient and add growth and experience. But at the same time, if we can help someone through those struggles,
Right.
that right there does so much more.
Right.
Because that allows them to have more energy to take another step.
Yep.
And continue going. So, yeah, the housing, it's definitely a crisis here in Lincoln. Like you said, Colorado,
It's
you
really
get up,
bad.
It's really bad.
But we could certainly be susceptible to that.
Yeah.
So we have to work really diligently to make sure that doesn't happen. But we also have a lot of homeless veterans, which is another group that we go after finding and connecting with to try to bring in our apprenticeship program. And just so happens, I think next episode we're going to talk about veterans.
Yes.
And some of the impacts that we're trying to make with our program as well. So that's probably a good segue. But my biggest plea would be support housing initiatives, support Jason's Heart, and you're also doing that, kind of vicariously through us. So it's a big deal. We need more people to be on board. Housing is huge. It's the cornerstone.
Everyone should be able to have a home sweet home.
Yep.
And be able to afford it, for sure.
So I think that's it. Next time though, veterans, we're going to talk about that. It's a really not that we have a best. So I don't like to say we saved the best for last, but I have a lot of family that are veterans. My dad was a veteran, so it's something near and dear to me. But we will be tackling that next time and talking about it.
Looking forward to it.
Peace out.